Most people think the best way to start learning Spanish is by learning a bunch of Spanish words and phrases and pushing off grammar for later. But that's actually the worst way to start. In the next 5 minutes, I'll show you the top 4 reasons why learning grammar first will get you fluent much faster. Let's kick off with reason number 1. Grammar is how adults learn a language. This might surprise you, so let's go ahead and bust one of the biggest myths in language learning. A lot of people say kids learn languages by focusing on learning words, not grammar. So I should do that too, right? Well, that's not quite true. The fact is, kids actually do learn grammar first, but they do it without even realizing it. Sure, kids spend a lot of effort learning vocabulary, but that's because grammar comes so naturally for them. That's why adults spend time teaching toddlers, this is the dog, this is the cow, this is the rooster. But we don't have to explain how to conjugate verbs like I am, they are, he is. Young kids pick up these language patterns naturally, but they don't pick up words quite as easily. So instead of emphasizing grammar for little kids, we have to tell them how to learn new animal names and colors and things like that. Now, adults are the opposite. Our adult brains are now really good at learning new names for things. We can easily look up the Spanish word for chair or friend, and we remember those things pretty easily. But unlike kids, we're not so great at subconsciously picking up the patterns of the language. And that's exactly what grammar is. It isn't a set of rules, it's a framework for how the language works. Things like sentence structures, connecting words, and verb conjugations. By understanding these patterns, we build the mental models of how the language fits together, and that's what makes it finally click. So yeah, it takes more effort for us adults to learn grammar, but that's exactly why we should learn grammar first. And that brings us to reason number 2. The hardest stuff should come first. Even though starting with grammar might make Spanish harder at first, it actually makes learning the language easier. Wait, what? How does that even make sense? Well, that's because hard things get easier with practice over time. If you wait to learn grammar until later, after learning tons of vocabulary, you're going to be trying to stack the most complicated parts of the language on top of all those words you've already crammed into your head. It's kind of like you're building a house and you first put down a bunch of bricks and then you try to lay the foundation. But if you flip it and start with grammar, everything you learn afterwards will fit in place pretty easily. Once you have that foundation, every new word just clicks into place almost automatically. You're not just memorizing random nouns and verbs, you're plugging them into a system that makes sense. When you do that, Spanish becomes a downhill journey that gets easier, not harder. And that's the kind of momentum that you want. That brings us to the surprising 3rd reason to learn grammar first. Grammar actually covers more ground than vocabulary. When people say they want to learn Spanish vocabulary, they typically mean nouns, like table, car, school. But those words are not the most useful words in Spanish. Let's look at the data. Check out this frequency list of the most used words in Spanish. The top words aren't vocabulary words, they're grammatical words. Things like prepositions like de and en, verbs like ser, estar, haber, and tener, little connectors like que and y, and pronouns like le, me, and te. If you start by mastering these grammar-packed most frequent words, you can understand 50% of spoken Spanish with just the top 100. You don't need to know peach or broom to have a conversation. You need to know how to say, I want him to be here, or she has done that, or they have these. Here are a few more sentences from our Spanish in 1 month challenge that use just grammar and the top 100 words. No lo quiero hacer otra vez means I don't want to do it again. Le tengo que hacer algo means I have to do something for him. Estábamos aquí al mismo tiempo means we were here at the same time. These sentences aren't vocab-packed, they're grammar-packed. And knowing how these words work in these sentence structures is what will get you expressing yourself the fastest. That brings us to reason number 4, which is the biggest one. Grammar is the heart of the Spanish language. In other words, learning Spanish means learning Spanish grammar, not just learning Spanish vocabulary. Think about it this way. Learning new vocabulary just means learning new names for things. But learning grammar means learning how a language works. Here's an example. Let's say you go from the US to the UK and you hear somebody say the word lift instead of elevator. If you learn how to say the lift instead of the elevator, you're not learning a new language, you're just learning a new name for something. Grammar, on the other hand, is a whole different story. For example, take the phrase, I want you to be here. To express this in Spanish, we need to use the subjunctive estés, which is a concept we don't have in English, and we have to put it in its own clause. So this becomes, quiero que estés aquí. This is a totally different way of thinking. You're not just renaming things, you're learning to rebuild your sentences from the ground up. And that's what real language learning is. Learning to express yourself the way that native Spanish speakers do, authentically. So if you're serious about learning real Spanish, you should start by mastering core grammar. You can do this by joining our Spanish in 1 month challenge. This is a 4-week grammar bootcamp that teaches you the top 100 words and the core grammar structures behind real Spanish conversations. We designed this course with you in mind if you're an adult Spanish learner who wants to start with the hard stuff and truly express yourself in Spanish. By the end of 1 month, you'll be able to use and understand 50% of everyday spoken Spanish. Throughout each day of the challenge, you'll practice full sentences using mental models of Spanish that help you build real fluency, not just memorizing vocabulary words. When you join the challenge, you'll get access to step-by-step daily lessons, personalized grammar drills to master everything, access to our expert native-speaking Spanish coaches, and a community of students all doing it with you. This is how we've seen thousands of students finally break through to real fluency. So if you're ready to get serious and master the heart of the Spanish language, use the link in the description to join the next challenge. Nos vemos allí.